I sat there in the courtroom, the air thick with tension, my hands resting on the wooden table in front of me, feeling every scratch and groove under my fingertips. Across from me was Vanessa, my soon-to-be ex-wife, her perfectly styled hair and sharp navy suit making her look like she'd already won. Next to her, Gregory Palmer, her lawyer, leaned back in his chair with that smug grin plastered across his face like he was enjoying every second of my downfall. The divorce hearing had dragged on for hours, and now we were at the end, the part where they divide up our lives like it was some garage sale. Gregory's voice cut through the room, sharp and mocking. "Enjoy your new life. You'll be leaving with nothing," he said, his eyes glinting with victory. Vanessa didn't even look at me when she spoke, her words cold and quick. "You should have been a better husband." I felt my heart slam against my chest, a hot rush of anger mixing with something heavier, regret, maybe, or just plain hurt. But I didn't let it show. I kept my face steady, my jaw tight, my eyes locked on the judge's weathered hands as he shuffled papers in front of him. The judge, a tired-looking man with gray hair and a voice like gravel, turned to me. "Mr. Mitchell, do you have any final words before I make my ruling?" he asked, peering over his glasses. The room went quiet, and I could feel Vanessa and Gregory watching me, waiting for me to crumble, to beg, to say something weak. But I didn't. Instead, I felt a small, strange calm settle over me, like the moment before a storm hits. I reached into my briefcase, my fingers brushing against the thick folder I'd spent months putting together. "Actually, yes," I said, my voice steady as I slid it across the table toward him. "I'd like to submit this as evidence." The judge raised an eyebrow, curious, and took it from me. Vanessa's head snapped up, her eyes narrowing, but I didn't look at her. Not yet. I wanted to see her face when the truth hit. The judge opened the folder, his fingers flipping through the pages one by one. I knew what he was seeing, every receipt, every email, every bank statement I'd dug up like buried treasure. My hands stayed clasped in front of me, but inside, my mind was racing. This wasn't just about the divorce anymore. This was about everything she'd taken from me, everything she thought I'd let her get away with. The silence stretched on, and I risked a glance at Vanessa. Her smirk was gone. Her face had gone pale, like the blood had drained right out of her. Gregory shifted in his seat, his fingers tapping nervously on the table, his confidence cracking. "What is this?" he muttered under his breath, but I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The judge's eyes flicked up to me, then back to the papers, and I could tell he was starting to understand. I leaned back in my chair, letting the moment sink in. For months, I've been the quiet one, the guy who didn't fight back, the husband who let her walk all over him. But not today. Today I was the one with the upper hand, and it felt good, better than I'd expected. Vanessa's voice broke the silence, sharp and shaky. "What did you do?" she hissed, leaning toward me, her eyes wide with something I hadn't seen in her before, fear. I didn't answer right away. I just smiled, a small, tight smile, and turned my attention back to the judge. He cleared his throat, setting the folder down, and looked at Vanessa's side of the room. "Counselor, Ms. Mitchell," he said, his tone heavy, "we're going to need to discuss this further." My heart was still pounding, but now it wasn't anger driving it. It was satisfaction. I played my card, and the game was about to change. The courtroom buzzed with whispers as the judge called for a recess, and I watched Vanessa and Gregory huddle together, their heads bent low, their voices sharp and fast. She shot me a look, half rage, half panic, and I met her gaze without flinching. 12 years of marriage, and it had come to this. Me with a folder full of her secrets, her with nothing but a lawyer who was starting to sweat. I didn't know what the judge would decide, not yet, but I knew one thing for sure. Vanessa wasn't laughing anymore, and that was enough for now. I stood up as the bailiff motioned for us to leave the room, my folder still sitting on the judge's bench like a ticking bomb. This wasn't the end, not even close, but it was a start, a damn good one. I walked out of the courtroom, my steps steady, my head high, feeling lighter than I had in years. Whatever came next, I was ready. I woke up that morning expecting the usual. Coffee brewing in the kitchen, the soft hum of the house waking up, maybe a quiet hour to myself before the day started. The bedroom was still dark, the curtains drawn tight, and the clock on my nightstand blinked 6:45 in red digits. I rubbed my eyes, feeling the weight of another restless night, and swung my legs out of bed. Vanessa was already up, which wasn't unusual. She'd always been the early riser, the one with energy I could never match. I shuffled into the kitchen, my bare feet cold against the tile, and saw her standing by the counter. She wasn't making coffee, though. She was holding a manila envelope, her fingers tapping against it absently, her eyes glued to her phone. "Morning," I mumbled, reaching for the coffee pot, but she didn't look up. Instead, she slid the envelope across the counter toward me, her voice casual, like she was telling me about the weather. "I've spoken to my lawyer," she said. "This should be simple." I froze, my hand hovering over the pot, the words sinking in, slow and heavy. 12 years we'd been married. 12 years of me standing by her, building a life together, and this was how it ended. I picked up the envelope, my fingers fumbling with the clasp, and pulled out the papers inside. Divorce papers. Her signature was already there, neat and sharp, like she'd signed a business contract. My eyes scanned the pages, the legal words blurring together, but one thing stood out clear as day. I was getting nothing. No house, no money, no piece of the business I'd helped her build. Zero. I looked up at her, waiting for something, an explanation, an apology, anything. But she just kept scrolling on her phone, her face blank. "Vanessa," I said, my voice rough. "What is this?" She finally glanced at me, her eyes cool and distant. "It's over," she said. "You knew this was coming." Did I? I stood there, the papers shaking in my hands, feeling like the floor had dropped out from under me. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at her, trying to make sense of it. She didn't even flinch, just went back to her phone like I wasn't there. I'd spent years supporting her, pouring myself into Freshmart, her chain of supermarkets. I wasn't the flashy one, sure. I didn't stand in front of investors or schmooze at grand openings. But I was the backbone. I'd handled the supply chain, the logistics, the vendor negotiations, the endless spreadsheets and forecasts. I'd stayed up late optimizing delivery routes when she was too tired, streamlined inventory systems when she was too busy, all without a formal title or a thank you. And now she was tossing me out like I'd been some hired help she didn't need anymore. "After everything," I said, my voice low, "this is what I get." She sighed, setting her phone down, and looked at me like I was a kid who didn't get it. "You didn't keep up," she said. "I grew. You didn't." The words hit me like a punch, and I felt something inside me snap. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet break, like a string pulled too tight. I walked out of the kitchen, the papers still in my hand, and sat on the couch in the living room. The house was quiet, too quiet, and I could hear her moving around behind me, getting ready for her day like nothing had happened. I flipped through the pages again, reading every line, every cold, calculated detail. She wanted the house we'd bought together in Brentwood, the one I'd fixed up with my own hands. New paint, new floors, every leaky faucet replaced. She wanted the business, all of it. Even though I'd been there from day one, back when it was just an idea scribbled on a napkin. No alimony, no equity, nothing. Just a clean break for her and a big, empty nothing for me. My chest tightened, and I clenched my jaw, trying to keep the anger from spilling out. I wanted to yell, to throw the papers in her face, to demand she explain how she could do this. But I didn't. I just sat there, breathing hard, letting it sink in. By the time she left for work, her heels clicking against the floor as she grabbed her bag and walked out, I was still on the couch. The door slammed shut, and the silence swallowed me whole. I looked around the room, the framed photos of us, the furniture we'd picked out together, the life we'd built, and it hit me. She'd planned this. She'd been steps ahead, plotting this casual goodbye while I was still playing the loyal husband. I dropped the papers on the coffee table and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. I could have begged her to stay, could have fought right then and there, but what was the point? She'd made up her mind, and I wasn't in it anymore. But as the minutes ticked by, something else started growing inside me. Not just hurt, not just anger, but a spark of something harder, something sharper. I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything. Not like this. I didn't know how yet, but I'd find a way to fight back. That morning, when she handed me those papers, she thought she'd ended it. She didn't know she'd just started something bigger. I wasn't always the guy sitting quietly in the background, letting life happen around me. I used to be more than that. And that morning after Vanessa dropped the divorce papers on me, I couldn't stop thinking about how it all started. I sat in the living room, the same spot where I'd stared at those papers, but now my mind was drifting back to the early days, back when Vanessa and I were a team. The house was still quiet, the kind of quiet that presses down on you, and I could almost hear the echoes of how things used to be. I'd been her biggest cheerleader when she started Freshmart, back when it was just the two of us in a cramped apartment in Silver Lake. She was sketching store layouts on cheap graph paper while I built her first inventory system from scratch. I wasn't a tech genius, but I figured it out. Hours of trial and error, late nights with bad coffee, just so she could track every product perfectly. She'd smiled at me then, her eyes bright, saying, "We're going to make it big, you and me." I believed her. I believed in us. Those first years, I was everywhere she needed me to be. I'd cold call potential suppliers, my voice shaky but determined, negotiating better deals than anyone thought possible. I'd shake hands at industry conferences, my tie crooked and my palms sweaty, while she worked the room like she was born for it. People started noticing her, her vision, her charm, and soon the first store opened, then the second, then the third. I was proud, even if I stayed in the shadows. I didn't mind being the quiet one. I liked building something with her. When she threw her first big store opening in downtown Los Angeles, I was the guy making sure the shelves were stocked perfectly, the logistics flawless, smiling at her guests, making sure everything ran smoothly. No one remembered my name, but I didn't care. Vanessa was shining, and that was enough. I built half of that business with her, even if my name wasn't on the company registration. The vendor relationships, the distribution network, the inventory management system, it was ours. Or so I thought. Now, sitting there with the divorce papers staring back at me, I realized how much I'd given and how little she'd ever given back. The house felt emptier than ever, every corner reminding me of what I'd put into it. I'd fixed the creaky stairs, painted the walls that soft blue she loved, spent weekends maintaining the garden she'd always wanted. In Freshmart, I'd been the one tracking deliveries when she forgot, negotiating with difficult vendors, keeping the supply chain flowing so she could focus on expansion. I never asked for credit, never demanded a title. I just did it because I loved her, because I believed in her dream. But she'd taken it all and made it hers, like I'd never existed. The anger was still there, simmering under my skin, but it wasn't just anger anymore. It was clarity. I knew that business inside and out, better than she thought I did. That was my edge, and I was going to use it. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my contacts, my thumb hovering over a name I hadn't called in years. Tyler. He'd been a friend back in college, a guy who'd always had my back, and now he was a paralegal at some small firm downtown. I hit call, my heart picking up as it rang. "Hey man," he answered, his voice warm but surprised. "Been a while." I didn't waste time with small talk. "I need your help," I said, keeping it simple. "Vanessa's trying to take everything. Divorce stuff? I've got some ideas, but I need someone who knows the legal side." He didn't hesitate. "Say no more. Meet me tomorrow, coffee shop on Spring Street. We'll figure it out." I thanked him, feeling a small weight lift, and then dialed another number. Aiden, a freelance tech guy I'd met at one of Vanessa's events. He was quiet like me, but sharp, the kind of guy who could dig into anything digital. "Aiden," I said when he picked up, "I need you to track some stuff. Old files, accounts, passwords. Can you do it?" He laughed, a short, dry sound. "If it's online, I can find it. Send me what you've got." That afternoon, I started pulling things together. I rummaged through the home office, her office, technically, where I'd spent countless hours working for free. Old laptops, stacks of papers, USB drives she'd forgotten about. She'd always been careless with the details, leaving me to clean up the mess, and now that was going to bite her. I found backups of early business files, supplier lists I'd typed up, even some login info scribbled on sticky notes she'd tossed aside. My hand shook a little as I plugged in a dusty drive and watched the screen light up with folders. Years of data she thought I'd never touch. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for yet, but I knew there was something. She'd gotten sloppy over the years, too confident, and I'd been too loyal to notice. Not anymore. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the room, I had a plan taking shape. Tyler would help me figure out what was legal, what I could use. Aiden would dig deeper, crack into accounts she'd locked me out of. And me? I'd piece it all together, every quiet contribution I'd made, every hour I'd spent building her empire. The house creaked around me, and I leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling. Vanessa thought she'd left me with nothing, but she didn't know what I was capable of. Not yet. I wasn't the silent husband anymore. I was the guy who'd built half her world, and I was about to remind her of that, one file at a time. The nights started blending together after that morning with the divorce papers, each one stretching out, long and restless, as I sat alone in the house, digging through the past. The living room had become my war room, papers scattered across the coffee table, my laptop glowing in the dark, a half-empty mug of cold coffee sitting forgotten by my side. I'd always been the organized one, the guy who kept track of the details Vanessa ignored, and now that was my weapon. I started small, pulling up old files from the USB drives I'd found, flipping through stacks of receipts she'd shoved into drawers years ago. At first, it was just a mess, random numbers, scribbled notes, invoices that didn't add up. But the more I looked, the more I saw patterns. She'd never bothered to hide. My eyes burned from the screen's glare, but I couldn't stop. Every click, every page was another piece of the puzzle, and I was starting to see the whole ugly picture. Vanessa had grown reckless over the years, too sure of herself, too convinced I'd never look twice at what she was doing. I found unfiled receipts, hundreds of them, tucked away in folders she hadn't touched since the early days of Freshmart. Little things at first, like payments to vendors that didn't exist, expenses listed twice on different dates. Then it got bigger, backdated invoices for deliveries that never happened, money shuffled to shell companies with names I didn't recognize. I leaned back on the couch, rubbing my face, trying to process it. She'd been moving cash around, hiding it, and I'd been too busy keeping her supply chain running to notice. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitant, then I typed one of the company names into a search. Nothing came up, no website, no address, just a dead end. That's when I knew I was onto something real. I kept going, night after night, the house silent except for the soft hum of the laptop and the occasional creak of the floorboards. Aiden had come through with some old passwords, stuff Vanessa hadn't changed in years, and that opened the floodgates. Bank statements, emails, account logs I hadn't seen since I stopped handling the day-to-day operations. I found offshore transfers, small at first, then bigger, thousands of dollars slipping out of Freshmart into accounts I couldn't trace. My heart pounded as I copied everything onto a new drive, my hands steady even though my mind was racing. This wasn't just about her cheating me out of the divorce. This was fraud, maybe worse. I thought about all those early investors, the ones who'd believed in her, the ones she'd pushed out once the business took off. I'd met them, shaken their hands, promised them she'd do right by them. Had she screwed them over too? Then I found something that stopped me cold. Payments to Oliver Reed. I knew that name. He was her consultant, the guy she'd started mentioning a couple years back, always with a little smile I didn't like. I'd seen him at a store opening once, tall, slick, too friendly with her, his hand lingering on her arm while I stood across the room, checking inventory. The payments started small, a few hundred here and there labeled consulting fees, but they grew, $5,000, $10,000, all funneled through Freshmart like it was legit. I stared at the screen, my jaw tight, feeling the sting of it hit me all over again. Not just her boyfriend, but her paid boyfriend, funded with money I'd helped her make. I wanted to smash something, to yell, to storm out and confront her right then. But I didn't. I took a deep breath, saved the file, and kept going. Anger wasn't enough anymore. I needed strategy. The folder I was building grew thicker every night. Digital at first, then printed pages I stacked in a locked drawer. I cross-checked dates, matched payments to store openings, dug into every corner of the business I could reach. I found more: fake charitable write-offs, donations to groups that didn't exist, all logged as tax deductions. She'd siphoned hundreds of thousands over the years, pocketing it while I was optimizing her supply chain, thinking I was helping us build a future. My hand shook as I printed the last batch, the printer whirring in the quiet house. I wasn't just fighting for my half of the divorce anymore. I was holding proof she'd broken laws, hurt people, lied to everyone. Justice wasn't a vague hope now. It was a real thing, sitting in that stack of paper. I met Tyler at the coffee shop the next day, sliding a few key pages across the table. He whistled low, flipping through them, his eyes sharp. "This is heavy," he said, glancing up at me. "You sure you want to go this far?" I nodded, my voice firm. "She doesn't get to walk away clean." He didn't argue, just told me to keep it quiet, keep it safe, and he'd help me figure out what was admissible. Aiden called later, his voice tense. "I've got more account logs from 3 years back. You're not going to like it." He emailed me the files, and I spent another night connecting dots, my coffee going cold again. Every new piece made the picture clearer. Vanessa hadn't just betrayed me. She'd built her success on a house of cards, and I was about to pull it down. The courtroom felt different that day, heavier somehow, like the air itself knew something big was about to happen. I sat at my table, my hands resting on the smooth wood, my folder sitting in front of me like a loaded gun I'd finally get to fire. Across the room, Vanessa perched in her chair, her posture stiff, her eyes flicking between me and the judge. Gregory Palmer sat beside her, his usual smirk dialed back to something tighter, less sure. The divorce hearing had been dragging on for weeks, but this was it, the final moment, the one I'd been building towards since that morning she handed me those papers. My attorney, Sophia Chun, gave me a small nod from her seat next to me, her calm confidence steadying my nerves. I'd handed her the folder days ago, and she'd told me, "This changes everything. Just wait for the right time." That time was now. The judge shuffled his papers, his glasses perched low on his nose, and looked up at us. "We're here to finalize the division of assets," he said, his voice dry and procedural. "Any last submissions before I rule?" Gregory stood, smoothing his tie, ready to launch into some polished speech about why Vanessa deserved it all. The house, the business, every damn thing. But before he could get a word out, I raised my hand. "Your Honor," I said, my voice steady even though my heart was hammering, "I have something to submit." The judge nodded, curious, and I slid the folder across the table to the bailiff, who carried it up to the bench. Vanessa's head snapped toward me, her eyes narrowing, but I kept my gaze on the judge. This was my moment, and I wasn't going to let her stare me down. He opened the folder, his fingers moving slowly at first, then pausing as he read. The room went quiet, the kind of quiet where you can hear your own breathing, and I watched his expression shift, his brows furrowed, his mouth tightened. I knew what he was seeing: the tax evasion records, the investor fraud, the fake charitable write-offs I'd spent nights uncovering. Pages of bank statements showing offshore transfers, invoices for shell companies, payments to Oliver Reed, all labeled as consulting when they were anything but. I'd laid it all out: dates, amounts, proof she'd siphoned hundreds of thousands from Freshmart into her own pockets. My hands stayed clasped in front of me, but inside, I was buzzing, every nerve alive with the weight of what I'd done. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about showing who she really was. Gregory shifted in his seat, his fingers tapping the table, his face tightening as the judge kept reading. Vanessa leaned toward him, whispering something sharp and fast, but he shook his head, his eyes locked on that folder like it was a bomb about to go off. And it was. I'd made sure every piece was airtight. Tyler had checked the legal angles. Aiden had pulled the digital trails, and I'd connected it all. The judge flipped another page, then another, his silence stretching out until it felt like the whole room was holding its breath. Finally, he set the folder down, his hands resting on it, and looked up at Vanessa's side of the room. "Counselor," he said, his voice low and serious. "These are serious allegations." My chest tightened, but I didn't move, didn't flinch. Let the evidence talk. I didn't need to say a word. Gregory shot to his feet, his voice louder than it needed to be. "Your Honor, this is irrelevant to the divorce proceedings. This is a stunt, a desperate attempt to—" The judge cut him off with a raised hand, his eyes sharp. "Sit down, Counselor. I'll decide what's relevant." Gregory sank back into his chair, his face red, and I caught the smallest tremor in Vanessa's hands as she clasped them in her lap. She wasn't smirking now. She wasn't even looking at me, just staring straight ahead, her jaw tight, her skin pale. I leaned back in my chair, letting the moment settle over me like a wave. For months, I've been the one on the ropes, the guy she thought she could toss aside with nothing. But now she was the one squirming, and I was the one holding the cards. The judge cleared his throat, flipping back to the first page of the folder, and started asking questions, slow, deliberate ones directed at Vanessa's team. "Can you explain these transfers to an account in the Cayman Islands dated 3 years ago?" he asked. Gregory stumbled over his words, something about business expenses, but the judge wasn't buying it. "And these payments to Mr. Reed? What consulting services did he provide exactly?" Vanessa's voice broke in, sharp and shaky. "That's private. This doesn't belong here." But the judge didn't let up, his tone growing harder with every question. I sat there, silent, watching it unfold, feeling the shift in the room. Sophia leaned toward me, her voice a whisper. "You did it." "They're rattled." I nodded, barely, keeping my eyes on the judge. This wasn't about gloating. It was about justice, and it was finally happening. By the time he called a recess, the air was thick with tension, and Vanessa's team was scrambling. Gregory gathered his papers, his movements jerky, while Vanessa shot me a look, pure venom, her eyes blazing with something I hadn't seen in her before. Fear, maybe, or fury, or both. I met her gaze, calm and steady, and didn't look away until she turned back to Gregory, her whispers sharp and urgent. The bailiff ushered us out, and I stood, my legs steady even though my pulse was still racing. Sophia clapped me on the shoulder as we walked into the hallway. "That folder's a game changer," she said. "They didn't see it coming." I nodded, feeling the weight of it all, the nights of digging, the years of being invisible, finally paying off. Vanessa thought she'd won before the fight even started. She was wrong. That night after the courtroom showdown, I was back in the house, pacing the living room, the folder still burning a hole in my mind. The TV flickered in the background, some late-night news I wasn't really watching, but the quiet felt too heavy to sit in alone. My phone sat on the coffee table, dark and silent, until it buzzed hard against the wood, jolting me out of my thoughts. "Unknown number." I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the screen, then picked it up. "Hello," I said, my voice rough from hours of not talking. There was a pause, then a deep voice came through, low and raspy, like it was trying to hide itself. "Back off," it said. No hello, no explanation, just those 2 words, sharp and cold. My stomach twisted, but I kept my tone steady. "Who is this?" Another pause, longer this time, then a click. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my heart thumping, wondering if I'd imagined it. But I hadn't. Someone was scared enough to call me in the middle of the night. The next morning, Sophia's name lit up my screen before I'd even poured my coffee. "Vanessa's team filed a motion," she said, her voice brisk, calm. "They want to settle. Full offer, house included, some cash too." I leaned against the kitchen counter, the mug warm in my hands, and let that sink in. A settlement? After everything, the folder, the evidence, the judge's questions, they were waving a white flag. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like a bribe, a desperate grab to shut me up before I pushed harder. "They're scared," Sophia added. That folder hit a nerve. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me, my mind already spinning. "What do you think?" I asked. She didn't hesitate. "We've got them on the ropes. If you want more, we keep going." I set the mug down, staring out the window at the empty street. More. I wasn't done. Not yet. Then things started getting weird. Sophia called again that afternoon, her tone tighter this time. My office got broken into last night, she said. Files tossed, nothing big taken, just a mess. Cops think it's random, but she didn't finish, and she didn't need to. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Random didn't fit. Not after that call. Not after the settlement push. Later that day, I tried logging into my bank account. Frozen solid. No explanation, just a contact us message blinking on the screen. I spent an hour on hold with the bank, my jaw tight, until they unfroze it, muttering something about a security flag. Coincidence, maybe. But then Tyler texted me, his words short and clipped. Guy in a black car followed me home. Be careful. My hands went cold as I read it, the pieces clicking together too fast. Vanessa wasn't just rattled. She was panicking, and someone was acting on it. I sat on the couch that night, the house dark except for the glow of my laptop, trying to make sense of it all. The folder had cracked something open, something bigger than I'd expected, and now the pushback was real. Phone calls, break-ins, frozen accounts. I wasn't scared, not exactly, but I was alert, every creak of the house making me glance toward the windows. Then my email pinged, a new message from an address I didn't know. No name, just numbers and letters mashed together. The subject line stopped me cold. Check the attachments before it's too late. My pulse kicked up, and I clicked it, half expecting a virus or a scam. Instead, it was photos, grainy but clear enough. Vanessa and Gregory at a cafe, heads bent close, and a woman I didn't recognize sitting across from them. Sharp suit, dark hair, a notepad in her hand. The timestamp on the images, 2 days ago. I zoomed in, my eyes narrowing, trying to place her. Something about her felt off, too stiff, too focused. I forwarded the email to Aiden with a quick note. Who's the woman? He got back to me in 20 minutes, his reply short. Working on it. Give me a day. I leaned back, staring at the screen, the photos still open. Whoever sent this wanted me to see it, wanted me to know Vanessa was scrambling. But why? Was it a warning, a threat, or something else? I couldn't sleep after that, kept the lights on, kept checking the locks, my mind running circles around what I'd stirred up. The settlement offer sat in my inbox, too, forwarded by Sophia, but I didn't touch it. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about the truth, and I was too close to back off now. The next day, Aiden called, his voice low and quick. That woman? Special Agent Lisa Torres, FBI, Financial Crimes. I dug into some public records. Freshmart is on their radar. Money laundering, maybe more. My breath caught, the phone heavy in my hand. FBI. Suddenly the break-in, the call, the tale on Tyler, it all made sense. Vanessa wasn't just fighting me. She was fighting something way bigger, and I'd accidentally stepped right into it. What do I do? I asked, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. Aiden didn't sugarcoat it. Keep your head down, but don't stop. They're watching her, not you. Yet. I hung up, my hand shaky, and looked at the photos again. Vanessa's face in the cafe, tense and sharp, told me everything. She was cornered, and I was the one holding the match. The house felt like a cage that week, every shadow sharper, every noise louder. After that anonymous email dropped those photos in my lap. I kept them open on my laptop, staring at Vanessa and Gregory huddled with Special Agent Lisa Torres, the FBI's financial crimes expert, at some tucked-away cafe. My coffee sat cold on the table, untouched, as I tried to wrap my head around it. Freshmart wasn't just a messy divorce battle anymore. It was a federal investigation, and I'd stumbled right into the middle of it. My phone buzzed every few hours, texts from Tyler checking in, updates from Aiden digging deeper, Sophia keeping me posted. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, too. The late-night call, the break-in at Sophia's office, my bank account freezing, it wasn't random. Vanessa was desperate, and desperation made people dangerous. But I wasn't backing down, not now, not when I was this close to seeing it all unravel. I met Sophia at her office a few days later, stepping over the mess the break-in had left. Papers still scattered, a cracked picture frame leaning against the wall. She handed me a sealed file, her eyes steady but serious. This came from a source I trust, she said, tapping it with her finger. Open it when you're alone. I nodded, tucking it under my arm, my stomach tightening. Back home, I locked the door, pulled the curtains, and sat at the kitchen table, the file staring back at me. My hands hesitated, then ripped it open. Inside was an affidavit, signed by Megan Walsh, Gregory's junior associate. I'd met her once, a quiet girl with nervous hands, always trailing behind him at hearings. Now she was a whistleblower, and her words hit like a hammer. She laid it all out. Vanessa faking purchase orders to overcharge customers, manipulating supplier contracts, funneling kickbacks to big corporate clients. Worse, Gregory knew. He'd helped cover it up, signing off on the lies. My breath caught as I read the pages, shaking in my hands. This was the smoking gun, and it wasn't just about the divorce anymore. It was criminal. I leaned back in the chair, the kitchen dark except for the glow of the lamp overhead, my mind racing. Megan's affidavit tied everything together, the shell companies, the offshore accounts, the payments to Oliver Reed. Vanessa had built Freshmart into a front, a shiny mask for something dirty, and I'd been too busy playing the loyal husband to see it. But now I saw. The FBI was circling. Torres's presence in those photos was proof they were closing in. Sophia had confirmed it over the phone that morning. The feds are watching her company. Money laundering through grocery suppliers. Your folder probably tipped them off. I didn't know if I'd started this or just sped it up, but either way, I was in it now. The threats, the call, the break-in weren't just Vanessa's panic. They were her trying to plug a leak that was already flooding. My phone buzzed again as I sat there, another unknown number. I picked it up, my voice low. Yeah. A text popped up instead of a voice. You don't want to be part of this. My jaw tightened, and I typed back. Too late. No reply came, but I didn't expect one. I set the phone down, my hands steady now, the affidavit still open in front of me. Whoever was texting, whoever had tailed Tyler, they thought they could scare me off. They didn't know me. Not the real me. The guy who'd spent years building something only to watch it get stolen. I wasn't the silent husband anymore. I was the guy with proof, the guy who'd accidentally kicked over a hornet's nest, and I wasn't running from it. I called Aiden that night, my voice quiet but firm. You still digging? He sighed, the sound crackling through the line. Yeah. Found more encrypted emails between Vanessa and some guy named Julian Weber. Took me hours to crack, but it's shady. Offshore accounts, coded transfers. I'll send it over. My heart picked up. Julian Weber. I didn't know the name, but it felt heavy, like another piece I hadn't seen yet. Thanks, I said. Keep it safe. He laughed, short and dry. You too, man. This is getting wild. Wild didn't cover it. When the files hit my inbox, I skimmed them. Dates, amounts, cryptic messages about cleaning the books. It was more fuel, more ammo, and I added it to the growing pile. The affidavit, the photos, Aiden's finds. It was a mountain now, and Vanessa was standing at the bottom, about to get buried. I didn't sleep much that night, the house creaking around me, my mind too full to rest. The FBI angle changed everything. Lisa Torres wasn't meeting Vanessa to chat about grocery prices. She was hunting, and I'd handed her a map with that folder in court. But I wasn't just a bystander anymore. The threats kept coming, subtle but real, and I knew Vanessa's team was scrambling. Gregory's name on that affidavit meant he was sinking too. Disbarment at best, jail at worst. I paced the living room, the photos and files spread out like a war plan, and felt the shift inside me. This wasn't about fairness or getting my share. It was bigger, messier, a fight I hadn't signed up for but couldn't walk away from. I was standing at the edge of something huge, and all I could do was keep pushing forward, one step at a time. The days after that affidavit landed in my hands felt like walking through a storm, everything moving fast, dark clouds closing in, but I kept my footing. I sat in the living room most nights, the lamp casting long shadows across the papers and files spread out on the coffee table, my laptop humming as I cross-checked every new piece Aiden sent me. Megan Walsh's words kept echoing in my head. Vanessa faking purchase orders, Gregory signing off on kickbacks, the whole shiny facade of Freshmart crumbling under the weight of her lies. I'd known she'd screwed me over, but this was a machine, a calculated grind that chewed up customers, suppliers, even me, all to keep her pockets full. The FBI was in it now. Special Agent Lisa Torres's face from those cafe photos stuck in my mind, and I was starting to feel the heat, too. The threats weren't stopping, and they weren't subtle anymore. It started with another text that week, late at night, while I was poring over Julian Weber's encrypted emails. My phone buzzed, the screen lighting up the darkroom. You don't want to be part of this. Same message as before, same unknown number. I stared at it, my thumb hovering over the reply button, but I didn't type anything this time. Instead, I tossed the phone onto the couch and went back to the emails, dates, coded phrases, transfers to accounts I couldn't trace. Whoever was texting thought I'd scare easy, but they didn't get it. I was already in too deep, and every new threat just made me dig harder. The next morning, Tyler called, his voice tight. That black car was back last night, parked across my street for an hour. I'm fine, but this ain't random. My stomach twisted, but I kept my tone calm. Lay low, I told him. We're close. He grunted agreement, and I hung up, feeling the weight settle heavier on my shoulders. Sophia met me at a diner that afternoon, her eyes scanning the room before she slid into the booth across from me. She looked tired, the break-in still nagging at her, but her voice was steady. Megan's affidavit's gold, she said, keeping it low. The FBI's got it now, confirmed through a contact. They're building a case, and your folder gave them the push. I nodded, sipping my coffee, the bitter taste grounding me. What about the settlement? I asked. She smirked, just a little. Still on the table, but it's a panic move. Vanessa's team knows the feds are sniffing around. They're hoping you'll take it and disappear. I set the mug down, my hands steady. Not happening, I said. This isn't about money anymore. She didn't argue, just gave me a look that said she'd known that all along. Back home, I kept working, the house quiet except for the rustle of papers and the occasional ping of my email. Aiden's latest batch had more on Julian Weber, some shady financial fixer with a trail of shell corporations stretching overseas. The emails tied him to Vanessa, vague but damning hints of cleaning up and moving assets. I added it to the pile, my mind racing. The affidavit had already blown the lid off, Megan spilling about fake purchase orders and kickbacks, but this was the next layer, the deeper dirt. Gregory was in it too, his name popping up in the emails, and I could almost picture him sweating, his smug grin long gone. The FBI had the case now, Sophia said, and I wondered how much they'd already known before I handed over that folder. Then the threats ramped up again. I woke up one morning to find my car's windshield cracked. Nothing stolen, just a spiderweb of glass, like someone had taken a bat to it. No note, no witnesses, but I knew. I called Sophia, my voice low as I stood in the driveway staring at the damage. They're not stopping, I said. She didn't sugarcoat it. They're scared, and scared people get stupid. Keep everything locked down, files, doors, all of it. I nodded to myself, the cold air biting at my hands, and went back inside. That night, another text, last chance. I didn't reply, just screenshot it, and sent it to Sophia and Aiden. My hands didn't shake anymore. Anger had turned into something colder, something focused. They could smash my car, tail my friends, send their cryptic messages, but I wasn't the one running out of moves. I met Tyler the next day at a park, away from prying eyes, the wind rustling the trees around us. He handed me a USB drive, his face tense. More account logs Aiden pulled, stuff from 2 years back. Matches Megan's story. I took it, slipping it into my pocket. You okay? I asked. He shrugged, but his eyes darted to the parking lot. I'll live. Just don't like the shadows. I clapped his shoulder, grateful, and headed home to plug it in. The logs were a gold mine. Transactions mirroring the affidavit. Payments to suppliers who'd never delivered a thing, all signed off by Vanessa and Gregory. It was airtight, and I knew the feds would eat it up. But I wasn't done. I wanted every loose end tied, every secret dragged into the light. By the end of the week, I sat in the dark again, the pile of evidence towering on the table. The FBI was moving, Vanessa's team was cracking, and I was still here, the guy they'd underestimated. The threats kept coming, but they were noise now, desperate, flailing noise. I wasn't just fighting for me anymore. I was in the middle of something bigger, something that could take her down for good, and I was ready to see it through, no matter what they threw at me next. The final hearing crept up fast, and by the time I walked into that courtroom again, I felt like a man who'd been running a marathon, tired but too stubborn to stop. The air was thick with tension, the kind you could feel in your bones, and I took my seat next to Sophia, my hands resting on the table, steady despite the storm inside me. Across the room, Vanessa sat rigid, her face drawn tight like she hadn't slept in days. Gregory was beside her, his tie slightly crooked, his usual swagger replaced by a twitchy edge. The folder I'd submitted weeks ago had done its damage, cracked their armor, set the FBI sniffing, but I wasn't done. I'd spent every night since then building more, digging deeper, and now I had one last play. The judge banged his gavel, the sound sharpening in the quiet room, and called us to order. "Closing statements," he said, his voice gruff. "Let's wrap this up." Gregory stood first, his hands smoothing his jacket, trying to pull himself together. He launched into a speech, polished, rehearsed, all about how Vanessa deserved the business, the house, everything because she'd built it from the ground up. His voice was loud, confident at first, but I caught the cracks, the way his eyes flicked to me, the slight stumble over his words. He was nervous, and he should have been. The settlement offer was still on the table, bumped up since the last hearing. A fat stack of cash in the house, dangled like bait to make me go away. Sophia had forwarded it to me days ago, and I'd stared at it, tempted for half a second. Freedom, a clean break, no more fighting. But I didn't come this far to cash out. I leaned forward as Gregory finished, my hands clasped, waiting my turn. The judge nodded at me. "Mr. Mitchell." I stood, slow and deliberate, feeling every eye in the room on me. "Your Honor," I said, my voice calm but firm, "I have one final file." I reached into my briefcase, my fingers brushing the edges of the new folder, thicker than the last, packed with everything Aiden and Tyler had pulled since the affidavit. The courtroom went still, a hush falling over it like someone had hit mute. I handed it to the bailiff, who carried it up to the judge, and I watched Vanessa's face as he took it. Her eyes widened, her hands gripping the table, and I saw the panic flash across her, raw, unguarded. Gregory shot up, his voice sharp. "Objection, Your Honor. This is irrelevant, a delayed tactic." The judge didn't even look at him, just raised a hand. "Sit down," he said, his tone hard enough to make Gregory drop back into his chair, his face red. The judge opened the folder, his glasses slipping down his nose as he started reading. I knew what was in there. Emails tying Vanessa to Julian Weber, the financial fixer Aiden had tracked. Proof of shell corporations funneling money overseas. Transactions that matched Megan's affidavit down to the dollar. I'd spent nights piecing it together, cross-checking dates, connecting dots until my eyes burned. This wasn't just about Freshmart anymore. It was international fraud, a web bigger than I'd ever imagined. The judge's face darkened with every page, his fingers pausing, then flipping back to double-check. I stood there, my heart pounding but my stance steady, letting the evidence do the talking. Vanessa whispered something to Gregory, her voice low and frantic, but he just shook his head, his hands clenched on the table. They were sinking, and they knew it. The room stayed quiet, the only sound the rustle of paper as the judge worked through the file. He stopped halfway, looked up at Vanessa, his eyes narrow. "Ms. Mitchell," he said, "these documents suggest serious misconduct beyond the scope of this divorce. Can your counsel explain?" Gregory fumbled, standing again, his words tripping over each other. "Your Honor, this is unverified. It's not part of the proceedings." The judge cut him off, his voice like steel. "It's part of my courtroom now. Sit." Gregory sank down, his face pale, and I caught Vanessa's hands trembling in her lap. She turned to me then, her eyes wide, her voice a harsh whisper across the room. "You don't know what you've done." I met her gaze, unflinching, and smiled, just a small, tight curve of my lips. "I think I do," I said, loud enough for her to hear, soft enough to keep it between us. The judge kept reading, his expression growing grimmer, and I knew it was over. Not just the hearing but her whole game. Sophia leaned toward me, her voice a murmur. You've got her. This is the knockout. I nodded, barely moving, my eyes on the judge. He finished the last page, set the folder down, and rubbed his temples like it had given him a headache. This court will recess, he said finally. I'm referring these documents to the proper authorities. We're done here. The gavel banged, and the room erupted. Gregory arguing with the bailiff. Vanessa staring at the table, her face drained of color. I stood there, the noise washing over me, feeling the weight lift, just a little. It wasn't about winning anymore. It was about ending it, about dragging every lie into the light. As we filed out, Sophia clapped me on the back, her grin sharp. You buried her, she said. I didn't smile back, just nodded, my mind already spinning ahead. Vanessa's whisper stuck with me. You don't know what you've done. And I wondered what she meant. Was it a threat, a plea, or just the last gasp of someone who'd lost? I didn't know yet, but I'd find out. For now, I walked out of that courtroom, my head high, the folder's truth echoing behind me. She thought she could erase me. She was wrong. The week after the final hearing passed in a blur, like the world had sped up and left me standing still to catch my breath. Vanessa's arrest hit the news 7 days later. Handcuffs, a grim-faced mugshot, fresh marks splashed across headlines as suspected front for money laundering and fraud. I saw it on my phone, sitting in the kitchen with a cup of coffee, the steam curling up in the quiet morning light. Her assets were frozen, the business collapsed overnight, customers pulling out faster than the feds could seize files. Gregory got disbarred within days, his name tied to the affidavit and those emails, his career torched. Julian Weber, the shadowy fixer, vanished, no trace, no word, like he'd never existed. As for me, the judge's ruling came through. I got the house, a fair chunk of what was left of her accounts, and the satisfaction of knowing the truth had won. But it didn't feel like a win, not the way I'd expected. I stood in the living room that first night after the ruling, the house too big, too empty, every corner echoing with 15 years of a life that didn't exist anymore. The furniture was still there, the couch we'd picked out, the shelves I'd built, but it felt like someone else's now. I'd spent so long fighting, digging, proving I wasn't the nobody Vanessa thought I was, and now it was over. The folder, the late nights, the threats, it had all led to this. And yet, I didn't know what this was. I packed a small bag that evening, just clothes, a toothbrush, some papers, and locked the door behind me. The house could wait. I needed air, space, something new. I drove north, no real plan, just the hum of the road and the weight lifting off my chest with every mile. Pacific Grove was where I landed, a quiet coastal town, all salt air and gray waves, far enough from Los Angeles to feel like a different world. The first morning there, I woke up in a rented cabin, the sound of the ocean creeping through the cracked window. No phone buzzing, no files to pore over, just the steady crash of water on rocks. I walked down to the beach, my shoes sinking into the sand, the wind tugging at my jacket. For the first time in years, I didn't have to be anywhere, didn't have to fix anything. I sat on a driftwood log, watching the tide roll in, and let my mind wander. Vanessa's face flashed through it, her smirk in court, her panic at the end, but it didn't sting anymore. She'd lost everything, the business, the money, her freedom. I'd walked away with more than she'd ever meant to give me. But it wasn't about that. It was about me, about finally stepping out of her shadow and into something of my own. The days in Pacific Grove stretched out, slow and simple. I'd grab coffee at a little shop downtown, the barista nodding like I'd always been there. I'd walk the shore, picking up shells or just staring at the horizon, letting the salt air clear my head. The settlement money hit my account midweek, enough to start over, not enough to change the world, and I didn't touch it yet. I didn't need to. The house back in Brentwood was mine to sell or keep, but I wasn't ready to decide. For now, this was enough, a bed, a roof, the sound of waves. I'd spent so long chasing justice, building that case, that I'd forgotten what it felt like to just breathe. Here, I remembered. One night, I sat on the cabin's porch with a beer, the sky dark and dotted with stars. My phone sat inside, off since I'd arrived, and I didn't miss it. Tyler had texted before I left. "You good?" And I'd said, "Yeah," meaning it. Sophia called too, her voice sharp with pride. "You took her down. You know that?" I'd smiled, tired but real. "We did," I'd said, because it wasn't just me. Tyler, Aiden, her, even Megan, they'd all had a hand in it. But now they were back there, and I was here, alone in a way that didn't feel lonely. I tipped the bottle back, the cold fizz hitting my throat, and thought about the last 15 years. I'd been her shadow, quiet, steady, invisible, pouring myself into her dreams until mine faded. Now they were gone, reduced to evidence in a courtroom, and I was still standing. The next day, I walked into town, the streets quiet except for a few locals nodding hello. I stopped at a hardware store, bought a cheap fishing rod on impulse, figuring I'd try something new. Back at the beach, I cast the line out, the waves swallowing it, and waited. Nothing bit, but I didn't care. It wasn't about the fish. It was about the doing, the being, the space to figure out who I was without her. The sun dipped low, painting the water gold, and I reeled in the line, my hands steady. No revenge fantasies played in my head, no gloating over her arrest. That was done. This was mine, my time, my choice, my life. By the end of the week, I knew I'd stay in Pacific Grove a while longer. The cabin was cheap, the air was clean, and the noise in my head was finally quiet. I wasn't celebrating, wasn't mourning, just living, one day at a time. I'd been her husband, her backbone, her ghost, but now I was just me, and for the first time in years, that was enough. The ocean rolled on, endless and steady, and I watched it, feeling like a man who'd finally walked away, not from her, but towards something.